Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Ag Forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions, your premier platform for real-time global insights. Well, in today's forecast video, I do have a bit of an extended analysis for you because at the end we're going to be talking about the long-range update for South America to complement yesterday's long-range update that you can watch on YouTube. But to get started here, I want to show you the surface winds midday today. Of course, we're going to do an analysis of Delta and Delta's eventual path into parts of Louisiana before it cuts through the lower Mississippi River Valley over into the Tennessee Valley and Ohio Valley, and what we're expecting in terms of rainfall and also winds. Speaking of winds, though, the deep low that's now cutting through this part of the Canadian Maritimes did yesterday bring severe storms through parts of New York, southern Vermont, New Hampshire, and over into Massachusetts, and a cool down behind it here over the Great Lakes. But you can see there's quite a bit of southerly winds that will be racing through the high plains today, and as a result, a major warm up there back to summer-like temperatures, but also a fire threat with some of the drier conditions. In the western United States, it's still very hot and smoky, and we're waiting on this low that's right now moving out of the Bering Sea into the Gulf of Alaska. But there's a bit of an issue here with the way this is being timed with a weak low that's out ahead of it and what that might mean for rainfall in California. So let's get into all of it. We're going to do that first by going right to our all hazards weather map. You can see where we do have the red flag warnings today in the high plains on those strong winds, and also we can see there is hurricane warnings out for Louisiana, and we got the flood watches that extend pretty far inland. We're going to probably see those expand with time. Taking a look yesterday at our satellite animation, a couple things to point out as this goes through sunset. If we watch it again, we can see curling around this low, those strong to severe storms that move through parts of New England. You can also see the northern edge of Delta here. But toward the end of this animation, we once again see how widespread the smoke is in parts of the western United States. And as we look forward as to where that smoke is going to be going over the next 48 hours, here's your latest update of vertically integrated smoke from the high resolution rapid refresh. Notice that the smoke moves deep in the atmosphere. So this is way up high across much of the central plains and then over toward the Great Lakes and the Northeast as we work our way out through the next couple of days here. From there, what I'd like to discuss next is the upper level flow, because there's a few interesting pieces of this I want to be talking about. Let's start with Delta first. Over Texas, there is a weak upper level low here with strong winds on its south side temporarily here coming out of the southwest. There's a weak subtropical high that's just off of Florida. And the two things here are actually helping to guide, giving us much higher confidence that Delta is going to take a track, just as the National Hurricane Center has suggested, right here into this part of Louisiana. And then from there, pulling it through parts of the lower Mississippi River Valley over to the Tennessee and Ohio River Valley. When we come back west, though, this is the wave that we're going to be watching emerging over the weekend into the northwest. And the cutoff low to the south of it, unfortunately, has been separated from that main wave. Initially, I thought this was going to get kicked pretty hard into Northern California, increasing the chances of rainfall here. But this separation is actually going to leave that wave out of the flow and as a result really stop the forecast models from picking up on the heavier rains in Northern California. Well, let's see where all of this is going, and we're going to go straight to Hurricane Delta first. After going over the Yucatan Peninsula, we did watch in the infrared imagery early this morning that the system is intensifying once again, and it's in right now a low wind shear environment. As we move forward in this forecast for Delta, though, there's a couple of issues with it becoming much, much stronger than it possibly could. And the first thing is the cooler water we do have right here along the Gulf Coast. Remember, hurricane strength is directly related to sea surface temperatures because it extracts heat from the ocean surface. And with cooler water in place right now, this is critical for limiting the upper level, the upper bounds in terms of strength of Delta. In addition to that, by tonight, Delta will be sitting somewhere in this vicinity, but to the north of it, we have strong wind shear. So this is going to take the upper level cloud field and blow it on off to the north and east, and that will spread out some of the heating and possibly prevent Delta from rapidly intensifying before it makes landfall. So overall, these are very good things about the eventual path of Delta. But the National Hurricane Center has done a phenomenal job on this. I just had the 1 a.m. update when I was recording my video this morning, but I don't imagine it's going to change too much. Potential for this to go back to Category 3 intensity over the next 24 hours is high, but it looks as though it might be a strong Category 2 at landfall. We have our hurricane warnings out into this area. This will then cut through parts of Louisiana, going right across the Mississippi River and eventually heading up towards Tennessee and Kentucky. We're going to see where the rainfall is expected to come out of this in just a few moments here. Feel free to pause the video and take a look at this peak storm surge forecast graphic. If you're in this area watching our video, it looks as though we see a lot of 2 to 7 foot amounts here at this point, with a couple of areas on the right-hand side of the track possibly getting upwards of 11 feet. In terms of rainfall, let's take a look at the latest data we have here. This goes through Monday evening. European models picking up on a pretty narrow band in here of 4 to 8 inches of rainfall and extending that here into parts of northern Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, and Kentucky. The GFS model is similar, but it does extend the rainfall a bit farther to the north, including parts of the Boot Heel of Missouri, southern Illinois, southern Indiana. So the GFS pulling this a bit farther to the north by Monday evening. So this is what we're anticipating in terms of rainfall from our 2 global models. The extent of this tropical storm force winds, pause the video here and take a closer look at this graphic from the National Hurricane Center. It's the chance or the probability of getting at least 39-mile-an-hour winds. I'd like to show you a zoomed-in version here from the European model, suggesting that wind gusts upward of about 55 miles an hour are possible in this area, and seeing wind gusts up to 40 miles an hour or higher extend pretty far out to the east of that. Remember, the strongest winds are going to be on the eastern side of this hurricane, which is the right-hand side. We are expecting here up to 120-mile-an-hour gusts as it makes landfall. It seems as though it's targeting going right over the top of St. Charles. That seems to be where we're currently thinking about this system moving through. Okay, stepping back though, notice that as the pattern changes over the next 6 to 7 days across the rest of North America, we're going to be seeing some strong winds moving through the plains into the Great Lakes states and even into the Northeast after coming through the mountains in the west. So this pattern is evolving quite a bit, and we better take a look at what's going on there. So I'm going to take you over to the operational European model. We start off first with our deep low that's moving through just off the northeast coast here. Here's Delta. You can see the high pressure sitting over the Great Lakes states. Playing this forward, let's just walk through our next couple of days, getting us out to, let's just take it to Saturday morning. Delta moves inland, bringing heavy rain into parts of Louisiana and Arkansas, spreading into Mississippi as well. Meantime, there is a little clipper that cuts right in through here out of Saskatchewan, now over to parts of Ontario and Quebec. And on its northern side, we might get a little bit of snow here. But outside of that, high pressure builds in on the backside. By Saturday morning, the wave moves into the Pacific Northwest and spreads rain through parts of the Columbia Basin, then getting into the northern Rockies. But do notice as I go back and forth here, we are limiting how much rainfall northern California gets. And like I said, that's a pretty big model failure earlier in the week. We were relying pretty heavily on what the models were suggesting for California here. Some snow in the Rockies as this moves through, but notice at this point Delta has moved over Mississippi. The center circulation has by Saturday night. We're now spreading those heavy rains all along the eastern side of this through Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, and then up in Tennessee and Kentucky. That continues to spread in that manner, more focused to the east, as you see, are Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, and evening. So up through the mid-Atlantic, including Virginia, we are expecting some heavy rainfall. Sunday evening, I'm going to watch the wave that cut through parts of the Pacific Northwest to build an elongated pressure trough here, possibly 2 separate lows, one in Kansas, one up here in parts of Manitoba, and in between the two, there'll be a frontal boundary. And right along here, I'm expecting some potential for some strong to severe storms. Very strong synoptic level winds, broad scale winds around this as it moves through. So this is now Sunday evening, working way into Monday morning. Scattered showers and storms then move into Iowa and Minnesota before moving toward the Great Lakes states on Monday afternoon and evening. And we could get some of the storms cutting through parts of Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan by the time we do get into Monday evening. But the problem is, well, Delta scavenge all the moisture out of the way and prevents, I think, the southern plains from really getting too much out of this. So as you just look forward to the next 5 days, that's what I'm anticipating in terms of precipitation. Just want to give you a quick update on the threat of severe weather on Sunday. Storm Prediction Center has given this area a 15% chance, and our severe weather index is also highlighting that area as well as potentially having some strong to severe storms. The question will be, do we get a squall line that actually builds all the way down into the southern plains, giving some desperately needed rainfall to that area? The operational models suggest that that doesn't happen, keeping much of it up and through here rather than allowing it to build down to the southern plains. But what's amazing about the forecast, at least through the next 5 to 6 days, is that the European shown here, this is total accumulated precipitation, matches pretty well with what the GFS says. There are some differences, and I can go back and forth and show them to you, but overall the precipitation patterns are pretty robust at this point in terms of who's getting the rain and who is not. So let's go from there now into what's really messing things up beyond the next 5 days. I'm going to play for you an animation of the GFS jet stream level winds and the European jet stream level winds here. The models are in pretty good agreement at least through the next 60 hours, maybe even the next 4 to 5 days. They start to deviate as we get into early next week, and the first deviation happens with the European being much more amplified here coming out of the Gulf of Alaska into the Pacific Northwest. See, the GFS has a much more broad trough sweeping through at that time period. They still both produce that low we talked about right in through here for Sunday into Monday, but it's the differences beyond this that I'm going to have to watch carefully. So now we're pulling out into Tuesday, Wednesday, and let's just take this out to Wednesday night. Notice that the GFS has a broad ridge over the west coming out of the Gulf of Alaska, and then a broad trough that extends through much of the northern tier of the U.S. The European says, well, let's keep that ridge in place, but keep the jet stream farther to the north, curling it up over the Hudson Bay. From this point moving forward, let's take you all the way out now to next Thursday night, getting into next Friday night, and this is where the differences are really astonishingly large. You see the operational GFS opens up a broad trough and just sweeps it through the Great Lakes states and takes it off to the open Atlantic, letting the pattern evolve. The European, look at the difference in the tilt. This is going to cut off a low right through here, and as a result, let it sit and spin, drawing a lot of moisture out of the Gulf ahead of it. So why tell you all of this? Well, this is the day 7 through day 10 forecast from the GFS, and this is the European. The GFS sweeping that trough on through, well, you can see a much broader area of drier conditions. The European cuts it off, remember, and therefore continues to draw moisture out ahead of it, and therefore brings in this whole region in through here, showing up much wetter in the day 7 through day 10 time period. We're going to have to watch to see how this all evolves, to see how these things are going to play out. From there, I will mention that getting out to day 10 in the ensembles, they agree, but the only thing that's different is the European sweeps the trough through quicker, the GFS sweeps the trough through quicker, the European lets it linger. But still, ridging reforms in the west, that's going to bring the temperatures back up there. So looking out to week 2, what's the difference? Well, they both want to bring in the drier conditions here and also into the Pacific Northwest. But the European letting the trough hang around longer keeps parts of the east and mid-Atlantic wet longer into week 2. That seems to be the major differences in the models at this point. From there, let's talk temperatures. With that high pressure building in on that low that's cutting out into parts of the Northeast, we've seen a pretty sizable drop in temperatures here around our Great Lakes states. But as we play this forward throughout the day today, look at the heat that's coming up the high plains on those strong southerly winds. Watch that spread to the east as we go from the day Thursday into Friday. This is like midsummer type temperatures right in through here. Well, the influence of Delta keeping things cool down here. The Northeast is cool, but watch the West Coast cool down as we go from Saturday into Sunday. So summer-like weather here and a big blast of fall-type weather here as that trough cuts in, bringing in that rainfall this weekend. Going from Sunday into Monday, now into Tuesday and Wednesday, we see much of the country beginning to moderate, especially in the mid part of the country here, with temperatures. After being so warm going into this weekend. From there, in the 6 to 10 day time period, the GFS, remember bringing in that broader trough like this, is letting the cooler air come out of the Canadian prairies into the northern tier of the U.S. while the temperatures rebound west. The European, though, look at this. Remember how it was keeping the jet stream farther to the north? While it has the trough coming in here, it doesn't send those cooler temperatures as far south, but it certainly lets the heat build back to the west. That's the day 6 to 10 pattern. Days 11 through 15, both models did agree on this, remember? With the GFS and the European both digging troughs into the eastern United States. But notice the GFS extending that cooler air more quickly to the east, the European lets it linger. Now, here's something I want to point out to you. As we look forward in this forecast, I expect the pattern to continue to be what I'm calling week on, week off. All right? That means we bring in one regime for 1 week and it settles into a different one for the next week. And why I'm saying that is because going all the way out to middle of October, we do see that the jet stream here coming off of Asia going into the North Pacific is staying strong. It is going to split. That's very characteristic of this time of year, and then come back into some weaker flow across the eastern half of the United States. It's also very characteristic of La Nina. During La Nina Octobers, we tend to get strong zonal winds in through here. that tend to split as they go into the western part of the United States with much weaker flow in this area. That's what the blue colors represent, the weaker flow, the warmer colors representing stronger flow. And this La Nina, as we've been discussing, has certainly been the most dominant feature in the tropics. It's forced the stalling out of the MJO here. We have strong trade winds in through there, and those ocean temperatures are now averaging 1 degree Celsius below average. So thinking about all of that, looking forward in this forecast internationally, we're going to continue to see the drier conditions over here in this part of the Russian wheat belt. Europe has had multiple deep troughs cutting in as they've had this highly amplified pattern that's done something like this. That included a big tornado earlier this week in Belgium, but also a lot of very heavy rainfall. But we're missing it here. We've been analyzing that area for the last couple of months here as a region to be watching carefully for drought moving into the fall time period. To finish up, I'm going to give you a bit of an extended analysis of South America. Over the next 5 days, we continue with our heat wave, but there is some better chances of rainfall in day 5 through 10 and some cooler weather coming in at that time, at least for parts of Brazil. Argentina stays quite warm in the 5 to 10 day time period. As we get into the day 10 through 15, there is the potential, especially in southern Brazil, to really crank those temperatures back up again and possibly see some drier weather. Let's talk about that. As we look out over the next week, remember we need about 1 to 2 inches of rainfall, really about 2 inches of rainfall to bring the soil moisture up enough to get this planting to really take off. And we know from some of the reports that planting is behind average quite a bit here. In Mato Grosso, we are going to see some scattered storms that could be bringing those rainfall amounts up over 1 inch to 1.5 inches in the next week. But there are some drier pockets down here, like in Mato Grosso do Sul, down here in Rio Grande do Sul, and much of Argentina through the next week. The wetter conditions are extending right over through here. Looking out longer than that, I want to just focus here first on the map on the left, which is only week 2. We see the moisture trying to return here from this direction, but difference from earlier in the week is now parts of Mato Grosso are favoring slightly drier than normal conditions as compared to what I showed you on Monday. Therefore, over the next 15 days, which is on the left, we see dry, really dry down here in southern Brazil and Argentina, but attempts to bring in some moisture here from the east as we look out again over the next 15 days. From there, I just want to remind you that for December, January, and February, the correlation with precipitation patterns for South America when there's a La Nina tends to be drier in southern Brazil and Argentina. That's going to be the area we want to watch out most carefully. And to complement my long-range outlook yesterday for the United States, which you can get on YouTube or go to my.nutrienagsolutions.com, here's what we're looking out for December, January, and February from the latest European model. What I'm going to tell you is it is currently being dominated. These long-range forecasts are dominated by the La Nina. They picked up on that signal and run with it. So do you see the drier pattern here? Wetter conditions there, but drier in northeastern Brazil. That is just textbook La Nina pattern. Now, speaking about this region, I did an analysis for Argentina. They're actually going to be going into the season with deficit in precipitation. Over the last 180 days, they have seen a drier start to their wetter time period here, and we need to keep a close eye on them. So we'll keep you all up to date on this as we progress through the next few weeks, but thank you for your attention. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you again very soon. Thanks.